Welcome to the Fresh Vending podcast, where we discuss how smart vending machines are revolutionizing fresh food accessibility for both creators and consumers. Hey everyone, Isaac here.
I'm Nathan.
And today we're going to talk about the behind the scenes of smart vending. There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, let's dive in a little bit and we can talk about some of the different things that impact smart vending, that drive those decisions, and get a little deeper.
So the origin of some of these technologies started in other countries, right? Not the US. So I can think of like Japan, Hong Kong, or places that I know have had smart vending for a long time. Why did those places get it before the US? It's kind of like fashion. Things start in Asia and then slowly make their way into the US.
It's very, in many senses, the US sets trends, but this is definitely, to your point, one of those instances where the US was not only kind of lagging behind Asia, but also other parts of the world, because there's definitely pockets in like the more contemporary urban environments in Europe and South America, where you will also see these pockets of smart vending. And it's not just food, it's everything under the sun. So if you wanted to get a pair of tube socks and a slice of pizza and some shampoo in the middle of the night, you can do that. And it's really about adoption, right? Like consumers dictate why there is or isn't a certain trend is adopted. Well, I mean, let me ask you, you're somebody with a neuroscience background, like when you look at it through that lens, what comes to mind and why the US has been lagging in adoption?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of our behavior is dictated by genes, and a lot of our genes are dictated by the generations before. And so what was the US founded on? It was founded on breaking away. We're our own, country. We don't need anyone else. We don't need to answer to anyone else, right? And so that from the founding fathers gets passed down, I believe, neurologically to where, maybe US consumers are a little bit more confident in their ways, right? to put it nicely, I guess.
Yeah, confident, stubborn, very, we all, strong point of view for sure. Very independent.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
Whereas Asia, it's more collective kind of mindset. I mean, you see this in companies as well, between a US company and an Asian company, for example. So I think culture and how a country was founded affects consumer behavior down the line.
That's interesting. That really hits home. And when I also think about times that I've traveled to Asia, the food sensibilities as well are very different. So when you look at how the US very much involved with industrialization, and the question was, how do I take this food and make it last longer, right? So, I mean, for many, many decades, the question has been making the food last longer, get more out of it, make it more convenient. And I think that's driven us in a direction that you don't think of getting fresh vending or fresh food from a vending machine. Whereas when I visited Asia, there's always these markets where it seems like it's very common to me in my perception that people are purchasing fresh ingredients almost on a daily basis. And I think that's, in my mind, is definitely in contrast to most of the households that I know in the United States. You maybe go grocery shopping once or twice a week, and it's all up, and you have a pantry full of lots of shelf stable options. Your freezer's full of food, and not to say that doesn't happen in Asia, but I think it's just a more pronounced practice in the U.S.
Yeah, going to the market every day with my grandma in Hong Kong, for example, it's like you don't eat produce that you bought yesterday. You eat produce that you bought this morning.
Yeah. Well, same thing with like the fish too, right? Yeah. Like the protein, and I think it's those types of things too. I think when you're used to that, going and buying, it's like it's ingrained in the culture. Whereas there's many instances, in the United States where it's easy you could live out of your freezer very easily, and there's a lot of people that just essentially live out of their freezer with what they eat, their pantry and their freezer.
Yeah, it's also about trust too. I was reading, one of the founding stories of one of these smart vending companies, and it's like, yeah, in Japan, people trust that kind of sushi grade quality, and so they're more willing to buy, fresh food from a vending machine. Whereas in the U.S., like you said, it's about shelf stable, salty, sweet, and keep it as long as possible, pump it out, calorie packed kind of thing. So I think it's going to take a bit of paradigm shifting, but I think fortunately the technology has allowed these companies to introduce their technology into the US market while garnering consumer trust in a way. Like we were talking about, for example, smart fridges, which isn't, the only thing, but these smart fridges that allow a consumer to open the fridge and check it out, check out the products like they would in a grocery store. And then, yeah, of course, if you can look at it and see the color of the lettuce and tomatoes, you can say, oh, okay, this is something I'm willing to buy. And then boom, you just bought fresh food from a vending machine.
Yeah, I know for myself, like if I was going to buy, I would be much more inclined to buy, like there's another smart vending company. There's a handful of them, but one that comes to mind that does pastries, and you go up to it and you can instantly get a hot pastry out of it. It's high quality, it's pre-baked, and it's kind of just like held warm, like in there. And I wouldn't think twice about buying that. Like I know, I used to be a pastry chef once upon a time. Like I know that you can put out high quality product like that, and I wouldn't have any food safety issues, even if I was buying like, something that had ham in it or whatever it may be. On the pizza side, that's more of like a artisanal quality thing. I might think twice, but if I was really hungry, I'd be okay with buying it. Whereas I would definitely be more sensitive to something that's not cooked, that has, that's raw, like a salad or something along those lines, and really wanting to have that hands-on experience to kind of inspect it. But it's interesting. I think also the pandemic has really stirred the pot in how people look at things, how they think about things. And we're definitely in the early stages of Americans starting to adopt the concept of, I can buy a fresh, high quality meal and there's no person involved in the transaction. And sometimes it's also faceless, right? It's one thing to go, if you're, local cafe that and trust the owners, and you know their products, to buy it from them, and you have that trust in the relationship. But it's a totally different thing if you're going to a vending machine and buying some anonymous, sliced bread sandwich that looks like it comes from a convenience store. You kind of scratch your head and question your decision, and sometimes you're forced to eat it because that's all you have.
Yeah, and that's why I think a lot of these smart vending companies quite tactfully step out of the way and allow the operator brand to shine, because that does create that trust there. Okay, so now we've talked about kind of the origin story of smart vending and how it has gotten to the US and how it's going to be a big player. Now, other kind of behind the scenes of smart vending topics would be costs. It depends on the application, right? Whether it's a robotics solution or a smart fridge, but what kind of costs are involved in opening and launching one of these things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's a big variables. We had spoken in an earlier podcast about some of them require substantial kind of infrastructure, whether they need Ethernet or a floor drain, or they need, water going in, they need enhanced power, like a 220 outlet.
Yeah.
Those types of things, that takes time and money to make that happen. Others are really simple and plug and play. They're on wheels, and you plug it into a standard outlet and you're good to go. So that's probably the first consideration, because there's not just money attached to that. There's also a lot of time usually attached to getting those build outs done. And it limits the types of spaces that you can go into. I think the second consideration is the hardware, which is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
The third consideration are what I like to think of as like the indirect costs. And when we talked about whole product before, of how the company can design not just the product itself, but all those accessories, whether it's physically, tools that you need to operate the machine, and informing up front on those costs and how long it takes to learn how to use all that, It could be learning resources. It could be partner companies that you need to source, things that are consumables, that bringing all that together in the company that you choose to work with, and ensuring that they explain that all to you up front. So you go into your smart vending equipment purchase with eyes wide open on what are all those costs that are going to be associated. So for example, most smart vending machines, well, they need to be connected to the internet. Is there always great Wi-Fi everywhere? Not really. Is there an Ethernet plug everywhere? Rarely. So often there'll be some sort of cellular charge because you have to remotely look at your dashboard, right? So you always know, what am I selling? What are my inventories? What's going on with my fridge? So those are some considerations of, you need to have the software. You need to have connectivity to the machine. Quite often, there's the content, right? The food that you're putting in. If it's, looking at really understanding your numbers around not only how much does the coffee, cost me per cup, the unit cost, but how much does that, coffee vending robot, like what is the waste factor?
Yeah.
And what is the cleaning factor with those coffee grounds? So you're getting granular on your costs across the board with those types of things. When it breaks down, is this something that a standard repair person can just come on site? My repair guy that does all my other fridges or all my
Doesn't sound like it.
No, it's not. Often, especially when you get into the robotics side, I mean, these are highly specialized, units. You need to think about, is the inventory of these parts in the US, can it be overnighted? How many days am I going to be down if there's a breakdown? And ask for concrete evidence about that from the smart vending platform of, do you have guarantees of how long it's going to take you to get me back up and running? Because again, that's an indirect cost. Inevitably, these are machines. They're going to break down, and some of them are complex. And a lot of these platforms haven't been around that long. If I look at the top 25 platforms for smart vending in the US, how many of them were here 4 or 5 years ago? Not many.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you want to dig deep on how they're going to take care of you and your business over time beyond whole product, and the way that they communicate the indirect costs and the potential pitfalls.
Yeah. And I mean, one that I just thought of is delivery. You're going to have to presumably get some sort of refrigerated vehicle, or maybe it's a cooler or something, and drive a car to your fridge and stock it, right? And that doesn't have to be an extra employee. I think we talked earlier about how you don't have to hire extra labor, because under the same roof, your business isn't that crazy at 3 p.m. So maybe you can stock your fridge then and use your existing labor and increase the same store sales. But that still is a consideration. If you're not already doing deliveries, sending someone out to stock your fridge could be a significant cost there. So.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes operators will say, I have this amazing location. That's great. And they explain it and it sounds really good. And then you find out that it's 15 miles away from their kitchen. And you're like, last I checked at the gas pumps and last I checked at the labor, that could be incredibly expensive. And if it's one thing if you have a restaurant, but and you have a pre-existing kitchen that you can do all the production out of, that's fantastic. But if you don't already have that delivery vehicle, the insurance, I mean, it adds up. So it's like we were, kind of preaching to the choir before about homework, understanding. But again, the one thing you can control yourself, but it's going to be a telltale sign that you're working with a high quality partner, whoever you buy your smart vending equipment from, that they're proactively feeding you all this information. They're readily available. They're happy to be transparent. And as much as possible, they can give you a referral of somebody that you can talk to that can speak to the data and not just kind of telling stories about, how all this works.
So, all these costs are associated with one fridge, right? And so someone might think, okay, if my costs are this much for one fridge, maybe I should have many. So I can have some economies of scale, and, my delivery driver can hit 2 fridges on one route. So what would we tell someone who's considering getting one for a certain purpose versus getting a whole fleet of either robotic solution or a smart fridge or whatever smart vending solution they go with.
Totally. So usually the ideal smart vending love story starts with typically somebody has a kitchen and they can kind of see the opportunity for incremental revenue, and it just makes a lot of sense. They're already making these salads, they can box them, take them over. Ideally, it's in close proximity to their kitchen, and they hit a home run with their first smart vending machine, and that's great, right? Really nice experience. Then what you're talking about comes into play, and they really have to ask themselves, was this about, was this equal parts, I want to make a little money, I want to have a little more brand exposure, get out there just a little bit and kind of dip my toe in the pool. When you start looking at scaling, yes, a fleet is going to give you the economy of scale. You can make more money. You're going to get more efficient. And unlike opening restaurants, this model of smart vending it's just easier to replicate faster, more consistently. It just doesn't have the complexity of opening up, new restaurant locations, which is great. But at the same time, are the locations that you're going into that you had that first home run with, are those easily replicatable in terms of how far away is it? What is the demographic of the building? Are you going to be able to be successful with that same exact menu mix in the new building? So that is something that's really indicative of, the thought process that you want to have looking at growing. Now, one thing that I can say is that if the local university is 2 blocks away and you have one smart vending unit and it's doing really well, most universities, you could probably put 3 or 4 units, and it's kind of, it's built in, it's the same community, the logistics are essentially the same. That's great. If you live near a large hospital and you're already there, that's great. Those are, that makes it really easy if your first launch is in an environment that's, you can duplicate the success very easily.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. And now as we speak about this, the dashboard and the data really start becoming super important, right? Like
big time.
I'm going to put a fridge in Mall A in this city, and then I'm going to put a fridge in Mall B, and they're 5 miles apart. Are they going to cannibalize each other, or are they going to be just as successful and grow together? Who knows? Let's give it a shot and try it out. Whereas maybe within a university campus, the effect of 2 fridges does cannibalize each other, and you need to, maybe put one on the far side of campus instead of in the building over. So all of this should be data driven, and hopefully the smart vending companies that our listeners work with are always pointing them to the data and saying, what's best for your business, what has been shown from your sales.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the combination of learning that, the west side of campus, that smoothie machine, the number one selling smoothie is mango, and on the other side is lychee. You can't deny that, right? It's going to be what it's going to be. So the data is amazing in that regard. And then the other one is, when you want to learn about trends, go and spend time there, because anybody you talk to, they're going to be happy to talk to you if you can say, wait, you're going to make it more convenient for me to get this thing I really like. Just ask them what they really like. What, and we said this before, what food item would we need to have in this smart vending unit? What flavor of coffee, what flavor of smoothie, what flavor of salad dressing would you need to have in this unit for you to come, whether it's, once a week for an entree or on a daily basis, if it's more of like a snack type thing, they're going to answer you because you're making their life easier.
Yeah. And now we're talking about within the same fridge, what are we going to offer, right? Like or what our audience, what is the operator going to offer? It's all data. And now I'm seeing all these neuroscience experiments in my mind. Are the business students more into lychee or the art students more into mango? Who knows? Why? And, why am I not?
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's like anything else we do in life. Put in the time, do the homework, put in the energy, go in with eyes wide open, follow your gut. The company that you want to work with for smart vending is going to show you up front who they are and what type of partner they're going to be long term. So, watch for those signals and you can step into something and it can be really amazing. It's all about time, energy, and effort.
Yeah, and thankfully, smart vending machines are not rooted into the ground with a 20-year lease, right? So you can always pivot.
That's the beauty. Even if you're, there's been plenty of people throughout history that did tons and tons of homework and it didn't work out for whatever reason. But unlike all the other examples we shared, you've completely mitigated your risk when you can pull out and set up shop with that same unit somewhere else.
Yeah. So this has been a great discussion about kind of the underbelly of smart vending and what people can look out for and consider before jumping in. Anything else we want to talk about?
No, I think that's a good wrap up. Happy eating, happy cooking, and we will see you on the next episode.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the show this week. If you're interested in learning more about smart vending platforms, you can visit us at launchfoodspot.com. I'm Nathan Downs, and you've been listening to the Fresh Vending Podcast.